How is everyone feeling? Yes, I got a yes. Fantastic. I got a yes and a fantastic. Rosie's really liking the lounge. It's just a positive Monday morning. Um, so there's Burp and Fart Piano. Now that everyone knows about it, you should all download it and yeah. Burp and Farts are funny. If you don't think they are, don't download. I think that's pretty straightforward. Um, yeah, you should all download it and play it and click on all the ads and um, you have to like. It depends how much time you spend, how real the click is. I don't know. I get like 10 cents maybe. Yeah, right. Huh? This is mine. Yeah. If you do download it for iOS, not Android, you can, and it's on the Mac App Store as well, and with Chrome, but no one has a Chromebook. There's some redemption codes, or there's a redemption code place where you can unlock some hidden features, and the only two codes that work are the poop emoji and jazz hands. That's it. All right. Anyway, enough about burps and farts. Who spent the weekend learning Ruby? Yeah, me too. Um, is he joking? Is he not joking? What's this lecture gonna be? No, I spent the weekend learning Ruby. Usually, my last lecture with a cohort is the week 6, day 5 lecture, because then I don't do any Ruby stuff and then maybe an advanced lecture. But this cohort, I thought I'd try some Ruby, or rather, I got scheduled to try some Ruby. So, yeah, see how this lecture goes. Let's see how this lecture goes. So, let's see. Ruby. How's the screen? Orange enough? Orange enough? I'll take the orange off. So why bother learning a new language, right? Like, what can, wow. Better or worse? I can't even remember what the application is called now. There it is. I was about to type in orange. There we go. Like, yeah, it's only getting. Should make an app called like Snooki or something. It's gonna be super annoying. Is that still relevant? Or am I? That's the last time I watched MTV. Jersey Shore was new. Okay, so why are we learning Ruby? Why are we even learning a new programming language? It's good to learn languages. Can Ruby do anything that JavaScript can't do? It's object oriented. You can drop potato if you want. Through and through, yeah. But like, why are we going to use Ruby? Why not just use JavaScript for everything? Diversity. Not everyone uses JavaScript for everything. Yeah. It is good to learn multiple languages for the sake of diversity. But more likely, at some point in your programming career, you'll have to learn a new language for some reason. Whether it's because an old language becomes obsolete, or whether you get a job where they're programming in a different language that you do not know and you have to learn that new language, you're most likely going to have to learn something new. I think if you ask any programmer that's been programming for more than a couple years, they have maybe 2 or 3 or more languages that they're comfortable with. So just coming out of boot camp with skills with JavaScript wouldn't be helpful if we just kind of threw you out into the world with just that and no other language and no other skills to learn new languages. So we learn Ruby. What is Ruby good for? What is Ruby really, really good at that no other language does? Gets jump is kind of cool. Yeah, it turns like my 3 lines of JavaScript into 1 line of Ruby. Yeah, no, if you were to ask someone why learn Ruby, like what's the main purpose? What is Ruby really good at or really used for? What do you think they'd say? No, not making games. Does anyone program games in Ruby? Or was that just a guess? Oh, yeah. You can make a game. No, but it doesn't excel at game development. Not a bad guess. No, no, this is a legit question. Like, if you went to any dev and was like, all right, I'm going to learn Ruby. What's Ruby really good at? Or you ask a senior Ruby dev, like, why learn Ruby? Where is it significantly different from other language? Why would you be a Ruby developer? Yeah, it does a pretty decent job of making components. Not like much better than other languages. Does a nice job there. I guess, yeah, it is kind of a little bit more dynamic than JavaScript in some ways. But there's dynamic languages out there, other ones. Yeah, I'll give you a hint. It has to do with like the end of this week and beginning of next week. Rails. 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 Rails is the main reason to learn Ruby. Why would we want to use Rails? Yeah, kind of, in some ways. Express was a pretty cool framework. Rails must be pretty cool too. Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, no, it is. It is kind of like that, except Express does less for you. Express is very clear about what it's doing, whereas Ruby is more like, I'm going to take care of all the work and just trust me, everything will be fine. And then sometimes it is fine, and sometimes it isn't. This week, you will hear a lot of people talking about how they hate Rails. Some people will talk about how they really love Rails. One of those people is Karam, sitting all the way back there. But a lot of mentors will talk about how they really dislike Rails. Rails is really opinionated, and so are developers. So you end up in that kind of situation. But Rails can be a really decent framework to learn when you're starting your dev career. And I was speaking to someone on the weekend who said that employers, especially like junior devs that know React and Rails, not like necessarily together, but know this framework and that framework, React framework and the Rails framework. So it can be a pretty good framework to learn. In order to learn the framework, we have to learn the language first. And, you know. So we could have chosen any language to drop in here, like let's learn a second language, let's learn like Python or C++ or something. But we've got Ruby here, and Ruby really excels with Rails. Well, you need Ruby for Rails. Okay, so I wanted to take a quick, let's see. Congratulations, you've acquired a software contract with the Rails app. Yeah, no, this kind of speaks to the point I was making earlier. You might get a job where they're using Rails as their framework or something else, and you're going to have to learn everything super quickly. You will get more than a couple days. Like what, today's Ruby, tomorrow's a little bit of Ruby, and then you're straight onto Rails. But you know, boot camp. So we're going to be learning Ruby. I've already started learning Ruby, so let's see, what are we supposed to cover today? How Ruby is different. Oh, that's nice. I can compare it to JavaScript. I know JavaScript. So, learning a new language. All right. Yeah, this is something I wanted to talk about. So, how much time do you think you should spend when learning a new language? How much time do you think you should spend passively learning, reading books, watching videos, watching a lecture, versus actively practicing what you're learning, actually like practicing the language, opening up IRB, or just typing code? 2080? 20? Yeah, is that a scientific number, or is that just kind of a... I like those numbers, yeah, that's pretty cool. 80-20 applies to a lot, yeah? Yeah. Zero to, don't even read. Get given like a book on Ruby and be like, nah, I got this. Zero. Actually, I like both of those answers pretty well. You should spend most of your time practicing the language, and like minimal time just passively reading and watching videos and things like that. Especially when you're first learning a new concept. I think you spend most of your time, like maybe 80-20, maybe like 95% of your time practicing and like 5% passively learning, just trying to figure out new parts of the language. If you spent your weekend just watching videos or reading articles, you're not going to learn nearly as well as if you just practice the hell out of anything. So one of your first instincts should have been to open up like IRB or a Ruby file or something and just practice every single thing that you learn as you learned it. So you learned that numbers were a thing in Ruby, like go practice with numbers. How do we practice with numbers? What? Just like start like typing numbers and like adding stuff together. Whoops, 1 plus 1. We learned Ruby has floats, so like that was interesting. Let's see what happens if we add a float to a float. Oh, we get a float. We add a float to a number, what happens? We also get a float. Can I add maybe a number to a string? No, I get a type error. Why? That's different to JavaScript. So these are the kind of things that you should be doing before you even start reading that you can't do that. That should have been something that you practiced. Because you learn way better, learn a new language way better when you just practice it rather than passively watching videos or reading stuff. I wanted to bring that up because, like I said, I spent the weekend kind of learning Ruby and I spent most of my time in IRB. So, yeah. All right. I got a couple points here that I definitely think we should cover in this lecture. But is there anything in particular that people found difficult about the weekend work or confusing or want cleared up about the Ruby language? Often people talk about symbols being confusing. Does anyone else find symbols confusing? Like, what the hell's a symbol? Yeah? What other things were like, just, that doesn't make sense quite yet. I practice with them, but it really isn't making a lot of sense. Gets chomp versus stdin dot gets chomp. I actually did not do the weekend work, so I'm not sure exactly what that's referring to. I can make a guess about that one. I would have a feeling that gets would work to get standard input from the user, but you could change it to not have standard input. So like by default, it's probably standard in, get input from the user, but you might be able to change that to like a file. Gets chomp does something weird when you do it sometimes. I won't be doing too much with gets chomp and stuff anyway today. It's not a core Ruby feature. Any more like core Ruby things like symbols or classes we'll get to later, modules we'll get to later. No, like declaring variables. What's the difference between uppercase and lowercase? Defining methods, return values of methods, default parameters for methods. Private and protected. That we'll talk more about that in OOP in the breakout. Oop. Yep. All right. Let's just start talking about stuff then. Declaring variables. Maybe we'll do this all in a file. What should I call my file? Be the theme of our Ruby code today. Where was it? I had it up earlier. KaiserChiefs.rv. All right. Yeah. Right. That's. What is something that's Kaiser Chiefs? What's a variable I can make? Long hair. That's fine. What is long hair? Or like, is there a long hair emoji? And can I use emojis in my text? Hair. Let's just go haircut. Gendered haircut. What happens if I delete the gender? There we go. What's the difference between long hair and long hair? What's the difference between all of those? Is all of that valid Ruby? If I run this, Ruby Kaiser, am I in the right? No, I'm in IRB. Isn't it annoying when you're in IRB also that like this doesn't work? You have to what? You have to type quit. Yeah, or there's a different key you can hit where you don't have to type quit that Sam knows about. Ooh. You know when you're in Node and you have to hit Control-C twice? Isn't that annoying? Wouldn't you like a key that you can hit just once? It's not the percent sign. It's the exact same key you can use to get out of IRB. It ends a process. It's Control-D. IRB, Control-D. Node, Control-D. Yeah. It's fun, right? Now I've forgotten what. Oh no, I got it. CD, desktop, week something, 7. Ruby Kaiser Chiefs. Kai? I feel like Lane was out to get me when she said that. Warning, class variable accessible from top level. Yeah, so I got a warning, but all of that is valid Ruby. Sweet. So what's the difference between everything? What does this one do? I'll give you the first one. Creates a local variable. What does the second one do? Creates a local variable. What does the third one do? Creates a constant. Kind of looks like a class, though. Why does it look like a class? Capital L and a capital H. Those are the only two things that are capitalized. It's upper camel case. This kind of casing is used for classes, which are constants. So this makes a constant, but usually we reserve this type of naming for classes. What does this do? Creates a constant, because all I need to do to create a constant is make sure that the first character of the variable name is uppercase. So what does this one do? Creates a constant. Do constants this way. This is the way you should create a constant. This is how you should name your classes and modules. Create local variables this way. I'm not actually sure why snake case is the standard case. Has anyone used or seen a language where all variables and methods and things use snake case? Python does? Ruby? Cheating. The C programming language does it this way, so I tend to hate this kind of naming, but like some languages do it that way, and you just kind of got to do it the language way. Okay, what does this create? What does $sign do? Use $sign on stdin. I have to take your word for that. But it sounds about right. Like this? Or was it lowercase? Like that? Sweet, yeah, that is a thing. Yeah, what does $sign do? And why have we used some things that have $signs already, like $stdin? Standard in. I know someone knows. They're not methods. Not a bad guess. Global variables. Don't create your own, even though you can. Obviously, I created a long hair global variable. Global variables are like global variables in any language. They're accessible everywhere, globally. Don't create these. Some are already created, though. Like standard in. Definitely use those. The system has a couple of different ones. There's another one, $0. Does anyone know what $0 is? It's a global variable predefined by Ruby that we can access. Wouldn't it be great? Nil, that's its own other thing. How do I get out of here? Come on. There we go. Ruby Kaiser cheese. $0 is the file name. Yeah. So there's a couple of globals that you will come across. Feel free to use them. Don't create your own. It's bad practice. What it,
to get your file name?
in case you need to know the file name. Like, which file am I currently running in?
Okay.
$1 doesn't do what I wanted it to do. $. $* gives you the input, I think, as an array. All right, what does @ do? Instance variable. More about these later. What does this do? Class variable. Notice that when I created a class variable on line 8, I get a warning every single time I run this file. Sometimes you'll get warnings about class variables. They're not really good. Avoid creating class vars. Instance variables also kind of sometimes called ivars. Okay, so this is how we create variables. Any questions about that? So this is comparable to, let's see, in JavaScript, we would create our variable with var long hair. Actually, I guess we do camel case. We'd create our constant, same exact way, but it would be a constant because we used the const identifier. And global variables would just be global, right? We didn't use var or const or let or anything. So this is kind of how we would do things in JavaScript. In Ruby, we do it just by naming the variable. So if I want to output something to the console, I've used puts here. What are the different ways I can output stuff? What's the difference between all these ways? Okay, so they're kind of equivalent, except one we get a new line, one we don't. What does P do? Gets the info behind the scenes. Calls inspect on the object. What does printf do? Has anyone seen that one? Seen it in C, yeah. It seems like Ruby takes some stuff from C. From C, like literally. Like, this was kind of interesting, maybe only to me, but it literally seems like you can get some C code and require it into Ruby, and then you're just good to go. So I'm pretty sure this is the exact C printf function we use in C. Let's see if all of that works. Yeah. Hi, 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 hi. I should have done Ruby in 3 times, obviously, with music signs. Anyway, next time, missed opportunity. Cool. So, any questions about variable creation or printing? No. Okay. What should we talk about next? Functions, conditionals, types. Talk about types. What different types we have in Ruby? So actually, I'm going to create a new file for this. Let's call it types. Types.rb. What are some types we have? We've already looked at one of them. Like strings are a type. That's a type, that's a string. What else do we have? We have an integer. I don't even know what I would. Number of members. How many members were there? Looked like 4, but I might be wrong. Yeah, we have an integer. We have a float. What would a float be for Kaiser cheese? Ooh, what's the difference between floats and integers? Yeah, kind of. Comeback version. album number. We can stretch as far as we want. Oh. Rating. What's their rating? 2.0 out of maybe 2.0. Who knows? Floats. Yes. What else? Booleans. Let's be nice. Let's be nice. What else? Nil. What is nil? Yeah, how do we represent nothing in JavaScript? Null or undefined, yeah. They said dollar undefined. Null or undefined, yeah, we had that two ways of specifying nil, and they were kind of pointless to have both of them. In Ruby, we have one way of representing nothing, and it is nil. That is it. What else do we have? What are the types? I already bought one up earlier. Oh, there's arrays, yeah. What would the arrays be for these? Instruments equals. I don't know what instruments they play. Guitar. Banjo, maybe? That's how you spell banjo. Mike? Yeah. What? Ooh, drums. Yeah, there we go. All right, that's cool. Array. Yeah. MI and it immediately says middle finger. Microphone, come on. What else? We've got arrays, strings, instance, floats, booleans, nulls. What's another thing we use to store multiple pieces of data? What's another collection we use? Well, everything, every value in Ruby is an object. Every expression evaluates to an object. So these are all objects. Did you mean something else? Something? Hash? Yeah, like how would we do something? How do I want to word this? So in JavaScript, we can just create those new object literals on the fly where we give some key value pairs. In Ruby, if we want to create an object, we have to instantiate a new instance of a class. That's what all of these are doing. This is the string literal syntax way of instantiating a new string. It's the way of doing it with an integer, boolean, this is the way of creating an array. These all create new instances of pre-existing classes. They're all objects. But if I just want to quickly create a key value pair, like I would with an object literal in JavaScript, in Ruby I use a hash. What is a hash? What would a good hash be for Kaiser cheese? Members. I have no idea any of the members. Hash. We use similar syntax. And then we got some key value pairs. What should we use as? Yeah, okay. So we go like, guitar is I don't know, Mikey. Is that a guy? Who plays the banjo in Kaiser Chiefs? Thomas. Who's on the mic? And on drums? What? Ringo. He did a lot. Okay, all right. Yes, this is a hash. Yeah. Okay. Let's keep going, and then we'll kind of revisit each individual type separately. Go into it a little bit more. But yeah, this is a hash. This is how we represent key value pairs. a hash is an object, but this doesn't make it an object. The fact that it's instantiated from the hash class makes it an object. What else? Something that I did already mention earlier today. I'm not sure how to represent it with Kaiser cubes. Like, yeah, a symbol. How do I create a symbol? What would be a good symbol for Kaiser cubes? A what? A bun? Ah. Kaiser equals bun. Boom. Symbol. And there's probably some other things I'm missing. But yeah, these are the main things. I'm going to move symbol up to the top here. Okay, so this is how I create a string in Ruby. What is the difference between... should we go down a bit? Yeah. Strings. What's the difference between single quotes and double quotes? Actually, let's do this in IRB. What's the difference between single quotes and double quotes? In Node, in JavaScript, what's the difference between, single quotes and double quotes? Yeah, right. Like this is about it. You can nest stuff in like single quotes inside double quotes. What's the difference between single quotes, double quotes, and that backtick stuff? They all create strings in JavaScript, but what was significant about this way of creating a string? You could evaluate stuff inside, like, right? In Ruby, we have single quotes, which kind of act like single and double quotes in JavaScript. We can write things inside of here, but everything in here is literal. I don't know, write like that. I'm also going to put so we can see the output of this. So this will create the literal string hello world \n hi, and this is what happens when I put it. I get that exact thing. When I use double quotes, it evaluates things slightly differently. Then it actually takes a little bit more processing power. In this case, it's going to take the \ends and actually process them as new lines. It's going through the string to check what's actually going on. So when I put it, I get everything on a new line. On top of that, I can do string interpolation, which looks a little something like JavaScript string interpolation. So double strings actually do a little bit more work, evaluate what's going inside, and we can do string interpolation with them. Single quotes are the absolute string. So yeah, try putzing those. Should I putz or p for like demoing / debugging purposes? Well, puts is kind of like p, but with p, I get the inspect method called, which might be handy some of the time. So I'm going to use p for the most part, unless I think of a good reason to use puts. Not that I'm going to get anything different with the strings right now. Okay, so those are strings. What's the difference between a string and a symbol? Let's say I have the string hello, and I have the symbol hello. What is the difference between those two things? And why am I comparing symbols and strings? Anyone want to guess? So if I put in hello, I get the string hello. If I put in symbols are immutable. What is it? Yeah, you can't change them. So does that mean I can change strings? In JavaScript, could I change strings? No. So in JavaScript, if I created a string, that was it. It was a constant string. I could not say like string character 1, set that equal to actually a. Wouldn't do anything. It wouldn't manipulate the string. It might create a new string, but once you create a string, it's a constant in JavaScript. In Ruby, on the other hand, if I create a string, set it equal to something like hello, right? I can see that's hello. I could even create another variable, stir2 equals stir. Oops, equals stir. Right, they are the exact same thing. If I evaluate either of them, they are hello. If I say stir character 1 is actually equal to A, and now I evaluate stir, I've got hello. What about stir2? Hello. They were both pointing to the same string that I manipulated, mutated. Of course, if I reassign one of them, they're now pointing at different things. So now stir2 is hello and stir is hello. But yeah, I can manipulate strings. Strings are mutatable. I want to bring up something kind of cool. If we have an object in Ruby, we can check its object ID. Does anyone know what the object ID is? On any object, we can check the object ID. Since every value is an object, we can check the object ID of basically anything. It's just its identification in memory, basically. Ruby uses it to see, to differentiate between different objects, and it kind of represents where it would be in memory. When I create a new string, I get a fairly decently big number. And if I look at string2, I can see it has a different object ID. Okay, so these are kind of cool things. If I manipulate a string, let's see, I wonder. Stir.objectId. We can kind of see, I mean, they're a little bit far apart, but the string's object ID stayed the exact same. So string is always the same, it's always the same place in memory, but I can mutate it, I can manipulate it however I want. We can do that with strings and other things in Ruby. A symbol, on the other hand, is always constant. Oops, object ID. So I've got the symbol hello, and if I check the object ID, it's significantly smaller. It gets a lower memory ID, which actually makes it a little bit more efficient, but it can never be mutated. It's always going to be constant. And this can make the code a little bit more efficient. So let's start with our strings again. If I have the string hello, and then I have string2 equals hello again, they're the exact same string, but if I check their object IDs, they have different object IDs. Two places in memory were created, so there could be two separate strings completely separate from each other, even though they had the exact same contents. If I do this with symbols, sim equals hello, sim2 equals hello, and then log out their object IDs, they are the exact same. When I create a symbol somewhere, if I create that symbol, like I created the symbol hello here, and then I also use that hello symbol here, even if I do those in completely separate pieces of the application, they are the exact same thing. This symbol is the exact same symbol as this symbol, which is why it's so important that they're immutable, so that you can't change it from like right underneath another variable or another piece of the application. They're always the exact same thing. So symbols are kind of like immutable strings that always have the same place in memory. They're always going to be the same. If I access it from here or a different part of my application, it's always going to be the exact same symbol. But they kind of look like strings. In fact, if I wanted to create a symbol with spaces in it, how would I do that? Like a whole sentence. No, I just want like a sentence. Like I want, you know, hey, I'm not sure about that. How's it going? As a symbol. Wrap it in a string, and now I have the symbol, hey, how's it going? But that's going to be the same no matter where I use it in the app. Symbols kind of like strings, but immutable. And you'll see them used all over the place, because any time that we want to use a string, but there's really no reason for that string to have its own place in memory, for it to be able to be mutated, then we might as well just use a symbol instead, right? It does just as good a job as like being descriptive about what it's doing. Instead of quotes, we use a colon. Where is a good place where we're using a string that's never going to really be mutated, and we're going to want to use that same string at different parts of our application, maybe for accessing different parts of data? Yeah, that was a long worded question. would be a good use case for using symbols? We're using strings for something, but really, like, we have no reason to have this mutable, unique thing. How about in a hash map? So right now, the keys are strings and the values are strings, and that's cool, that's fine. The keys can be anything. By the way, we could have like a hash map be a hash map's key, which is all awkward. But there's no reason that every time I want to access my key, that I would pass this the string guitar. This is a brand new object every time, a brand new place in memory, a brand new mutatable thing. But there's no point in me doing that. What if I just wanted to, like, instead just pass in the symbol guitar? It's just, like, the code is just as readable, just as good, except I've now made it a little bit more efficient, saved some memory. Made it actually a little bit safer, too. So instead of just making these all strings, have them as symbols. And I have no idea. I'm assuming you can do symbols with mine. Yes, you can. Okay. Now every time I want to access something, let's say I wanted to access Ringo, I use the symbol drum instead of the string drum. Everything else is the same, except more efficient code, a little bit safer code, and you know, I use this instead of the quote.
Can you put a put beside that?
Can I put puts behind? Yeah, what do you expect, like, puts for this?
Yeah, I just want to see how it comes out.
What do you expect to come out when we,
Well, I'm hoping it's going to be similar to JavaScript object. Or just the
Oh, I'm in here still. Oops. Is that from Friday? Mikey and Ringo.
okay.
Yeah. When we access a hash, we have to give it its key, and we can't say members.guitar, because that tries to access a method on the object members. Hash maps don't have the method guitar, but they do have the key guitar because we gave it that, so you always access the keys with square braces. Some languages call these kind of objects, hash maps, associative arrays. So they're basically arrays where we get to use other things instead of just indexes. So instead of like 0, 1, we get to put in strings or symbols or other things. So you'll hear associative array used sometimes. Anyone have any questions about how I've used symbols here? Anything unclear about how I've used symbols? Yeah. Attribute is yeah, which takes in a symbol instead of a string. If you see a symbol, you could think of it as like, I could probably replace this with a string, except it makes more sense to use this immutable, more lightweight thing that's kind of like a string, but a better use case for certain things like this. Yeah. Exactly. This actual like way of creating hash maps has become so common and so popular over like having string and values that you actually have a shorthand, more popular syntax for doing this exact same thing, which is instead of creating a symbol like that, you make it look like JavaScript just to trick everyone. This is now valid JavaScript. And it is valid Ruby. As of new Ruby, I think like as of 2.0 or maybe 2.1 or something, you can create your hash map this way, and this is the preferred way of doing it. This is kind of the old way, like, yeah, okay, this makes sense, and I'm using strings, but actually I want to use symbols, so let's just make this syntax that makes me think I'm in JavaScript.
So, by putting the semicolon as like back, is it still going to, like, when we call it, are we still going to say that in front?
You're still going to call it at the front, so this still is exactly the same. This is just syntactic sugar over this way of creating a new hash, of initializing a new hash. Ruby is super sugary. It's so sugary. It's ridiculously sugary. Everything's syntactic sugary. Yeah. Yeah. That's Ruby's pretty sugary. Yeah. Pretty magical. Yeah. That's the. Do you have any question? They're exact same. Yeah, you could write your hash this way if it makes you more comfortable, but this is the preferred way of writing hashes. Now, if you're using symbols as your keys, which is a really popular thing to do, it makes sense. So you'll see them written both ways, but definitely if you're creating your own hash, write them this way. Oh, my mouse is.
So is that like standard is to use a symbol for a key?
Yeah. I mean, think about most of your JavaScript objects. What did you use as a key? Probably a string most of the time, right? It just made sense most of the time. Now, maybe that would differ sometimes, but most of the time it's just a string. So, like, Ruby's like, well, it's most of the time it's a string, let's just use symbols, and let's come up with a different syntax, because most of the time this is going to make sense. For most use cases, this makes sense. Okay, let's see. So we went on to hashes as soon as I started talking about symbols. That was cool. All right, any questions so far? Symbols, hashes, strings? No? Okay. So let's take a break. When we get back, we'll touch on each of these types as well, and we'll talk about functions and iterations. Huh? No. No. No, this is my only Ruby lecture. The only one. Oh, I should pause the thing. How's it going? I don't play the piano. Yeah, it's the original Berkeley Park piano. It's the original. Oh yeah. Is everyone back? I think that's everyone. All right. Let's talk about Ruby. Have you seen the WAT video? Anyone? No? The WAT video? Like W-A-T, WAT? Oh, Google it. Google it later. It would have been funnier if you'd all seen. Anyway, there's a video. It's called WAT. Some guy talks about JavaScript and Ruby. It's like 5 minutes and it's funny. It'll be. No, we're not going to play it now. Okay. What are we talking about? Let's talk about numbers quickly. There's different kinds of numbers in JavaScript. Damn it! In JavaScript, how many different types of numbers are there? Yeah, like in JavaScript, how many different? Is it black for you too? Huh. I think my computer just died on me. Yeah, in JavaScript, how many different types of numbers? Like integers, floats. Are those both different types in JavaScript? Is there a difference between those in JavaScript? Yeah, in JavaScript you just have number. What is number? Now my whole computer turned off. We'll see. The rest will be done with hand gestures and a whiteboard maybe. Like create symbols like, I don't know. Oh, I can do emojis. Okay, it did restart. No, in JavaScript there are, yeah, let's do whiteboard coding, that'll be fun. In JavaScript there is one type of number, and it is a 64-bit float. So anytime you create, the number 1 in JavaScript, it's actually 1.0. It's a float. If you define 1 in Ruby, there's no eraser. So, all right, hand eraser. What type does this evaluate to? 1 in Ruby. Integer. And 1.0 would be? So there are different types. In JavaScript there was one type, but in Ruby there are 2 different types of numbers. So what happens if I add an int to a float? Turns a float. What happens if I... let's go straight to the goods. What happens if I divide an int... Wait, what am I trying to do there? Let's go like 4 divided by 2. What happens if I divide an int by an int? Do I get a float or an int? What do I get? What's the value, first of all, 4 divided by 2? 2. Okay. So is it 2 or is it 2.0? Is it float or an int? Someone thinks it's float, someone thinks it's... But in JavaScript, everything's a float. So these were floats by default in JavaScript. These are ints by default. Right? If I add 2 ints, 1 plus 1, we get the int 1, or 2, sorry. If I add an int and a float, we get a float. If I divide an int by an int, there's no floats in there. Maybe it'll be an int. Let's come back to that. If I divide an int by an int, and they are ints, what will the int be in that case? Yeah, maybe. It's asking me to install something, and I can't say no, I have to say details. Okay, so let's come back to that. And if I divide an int by a float, what do we think will happen? But yeah, probably 0.5. Probably. What if I just wanted, actually, what if I just wanted 1/3? Like, I don't want 1 divided by 3, I want to represent a third, right? So 1 divided by 3, you get the float that's 0.33333, but it's not really super accurate in computer programming. How do I get the fraction 1/3? How do I get the rational 1/3, not the irrational decimal? They're a fraction type? And for those mathy of you, like, what about imaginary numbers? How do those work in JavaScript? Ooh, 1/3 to I, but that would give me 2, like, as an int. 1/3 to an int would be 0 because 0.3 to I would be 0, yeah? The computer's loading up just slowly. Maybe that's fast enough. And now everything Adobe is starting up. That's great. That's why you shouldn't buy computers. You should just buy a whiteboard, do all your programming on that. I've got 2 versions of VS Code open. This is just... Okay, one second. I think that's good. I think my computer will handle this now. What happens in JavaScript if I add a number to a string? In JavaScript, if I add 1 to the string 1, the number 1 to the string 1. I'm going to get 11 in JavaScript. In Ruby, what am I going to get? Okay, let's see. Let's open up an IRB. Oh my god. I got the spinning wheel. Okay, IRB. Yeah, that's... So how would I add the number 1 to the string 1? I could make it a string, or I could 2s. That underscore case, that snake case comes up everywhere, and I hate it, but it's fine. Part of the language. Okay, let's try these out. So 1 plus 1 is 2. 1 plus 1.1 is 2.1. 1 plus 1.0 is 2.0. So every time we add a number, an integer to a float, we get a float. If I do 4 divided by 2, what are we going to get out? If I say result equals 4 divided by 2, and then I check the results class, fixed num is integer in modern versions of Ruby. So yeah, it stays as an int. So what is going to happen if I divide an int by an int that cannot be represented by an int? It keeps as an int, right? 1/2 as an int is 0. So if I want to actually make sure I get 1/2, how do I do this? Do I have to make one of them floats? Do I have to make them both floats? Yeah, I can make one of them floats by doing 0.0 or 2f. Whoops, not capital. Yeah, so as long as one of them is a float, you can actually divide. This is something that doesn't seem like super interesting at the beginning until you are building an application where you're relying on some sort of division and you realize you divided by int, so you ending up with 0 when you actually needed a decimal. I had one application where this kind of caused a huge error some of the time, and sometimes it was fine. It was just a UI pie chart thing. But anyway, you do get different types, and if you want to make sure you get the correct results, you have to make sure you're using the correct types at the right time. And you can't just throw a number into like a string like this. I wonder if you can do this. Cool, okay. So that's kind of numbers. Oh yeah, and there is the rational. So if I wanted to represent 1/3, I have the rational 1/3, which is kind of nice because you can take that and you can like multiply it to say an int. Did it just say non-responsive applications Wi-Fi? Oh, computers. Okay. Cool. Let's see. Week 7, day 1. We talked a little bit about nil. Nil represents nothing. But every value in Ruby is an object. So the undefined and nulls in JavaScript, I couldn't call methods on, but if everything's an object, that would mean nil is an object, which means that I should be able to call methods on nil. So I could 2s on nil. I can check the class of nil, nil class. Nil is in fact the only instance of nil class, but everything has to be created from a class. Everything is an instance of a class. Even classes are instance of other classes. And you just end up recursively finding that you're on class. But everything is an instance, or every value is an instance of a class. So every value is an object. And everything can be evaluated to an object in Ruby. Let's see if I've got my notes back. Yay! Oh no, that's not what we were talking about. We had types. This is really slow. My computer is worryingly slow, and I think I might have just turned it off again. That's awful. Nope, it's not. It's just being, you know. Maybe it's because I do stuff like that. No, it's just the case. Just literally falls apart in my hands. Maybe. No, I don't know what it is. I feel like I take this laptop to the Apple store every other week. Oh wait, no, it actually is dead, but it was plugged in.
Is it not plugged in? Oh, it was the plug's not plugged into the wall.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It was plugged in.
Turn it on?
Hold up, hold up. Turn it off and on again. Yeah, the bar's turned on. Maybe it's not charging. That would.
So why would it have turned on?
Alright. Maybe there's actually not enough power coming out of there. Whoa, my screen's flashing. I'm not Canadian. Can I vote? Nah, then no.
Here for
4 years? Alright, it might have been as simple as I had it plugged into the wrong thing. There's some cool YouTube videos on it. Alright, what was I talking about? Oh, everything's a class or an object or something. Oh, right. Okay. In JavaScript, how many? Yeah, it was at 0%. I don't know how that happened. In JavaScript, which values are truthy and which ones are falsy? Week 2 tech interview. 0 empty string, null, undefined, nan, false. False. Yeah, meaning that if I put any of those things into an if statement like this, they'll evaluate to false. Let's see if I can get this. Console, damn it. You see where I'm going with this. I'm gonna keep going though. Because I can. Okay, yeah, sweet. If you put it in an if statement, if it's evaluated as a Boolean value, it will evaluate to false. In Ruby, how many values would evaluate to false? Different types. How many different values would evaluate to false? Yeah, what are the two values that evaluate to false? Obviously false and nil. False and nil, when put into an if statement like that, I don't remember how to do this in Ruby, will be false. So, how do you do this the Ruby way? No, like the really Ruby way. You know, like, unless, oh wait, no, like puts, unless, that's not how you spell poop. Unless nil, is that it? Yeah, it is. Okay, sweet. So if I put in like 0, nothing happens because 0 is truthy. But if I put in nil or if I put in false, they both evaluate to false, which is also an object, not a primitive type. So I could, 2s it or whatever. Okay. Has everyone seen like the Ruby way of doing things? Yeah, so you've got if statements in Ruby. Let's actually do this in a file because it'll be easier. So I don't know, like if true puts hello, else if false. I really cannot think of any examples right now. Puts yo, else puts hi. Anyone got another greeting? End. Right, normal kind of if statement, if else is else whatever. You can also do unless, which is the opposite of an if statement. So unless false puts hello. We can also do things on one line. So I could put jazz hands if true, or put poop emoji unless false. So these should both puts those out. It's kind of handy being able to invert things like that. You can also use not, the word not, instead of using bang, you can also use bang. Oh, what? If not true. Oh. Unless not true. If not false. These are just weird examples now. So yeah, you can do it on one line, which is kind of nice. Like if you just had that one line if statement, like if this, then do that, instead of like writing it the JavaScript way, where you got the if statement and you omit the curly brace and put it on the same line. There's actually a one-line way of doing it in Ruby that is supposed to read very Englishy. So do this if this, or do this unless this, which is kind of nice. Okay. Numbers, booleans, arrays. Any questions about any of the types that we've gone over or anything so far? Nope, okay. Let's create some functions. I need a theme for our new thing. Maybe not Kaiser roll or whatever it was. What was it? Kaiser Chiefs. Any good nouns out there? Trees. Love it. Wait, no, trees could be interpreted as computer science. Sharks could not. Sharks. Yeah, we don't want to mistake trees with trees. Yeah, we already did. All right. Sharks RV. Yeah, what's something a shark might do? Swim? Or something to do with sharks. All right, we're just going to do some. All right, so let's define a method called swim fast. Just out in the open here. How do I define a method? Def or define. Swim fast. Then what? Do I have to like put parentheses there? How do I end the function? Do I need curly braces? Sweet. What should swim fast do? I don't have my thing. There it is. Swim. Hell yeah. How do I call a method? Call a method on the object. So if I define a method out in the open, which we don't usually do in Ruby, but we will do today, because we're not going to be creating classes, at least for the first half of the day, right, you call it on the object. So what's going on here? Which object does swimFast belong to? I mean, I've called it a method, so it definitely belongs to an object. The what? Yeah, so like in JavaScript, in Node anyway, we had the global object. On client-side JavaScript, we had window, which is the global object. In Ruby, we have some sort of global object. I think it's... Actually, I'm not sure what it is. Let's put self. So we refer to the current object using self. If we're out in this global scope, it might just be called global, or it might be called something else. Ruby sharks? Yeah. Main. Oh yeah, it's just called main object then, I guess. We are, in fact, all the code we execute in Ruby by default is within an object. So every function we create, every function like this, is actually a method. It's just a small detail, but might as well know it. So if we do not put, something to the left of the dot, like in this case, if I wanted to call swimFast, I might go self swimFast. If we omit the dot and the thing to the left of the dot, it just implicitly puts in self dot. So if we were in our own custom class, we would call methods just by calling the methods. Or if we're out in the open, it just kind of seems like we're using functions, but behind the scenes it's a method. But it would just be like this. Same as that. As long as we're within the object itself. So, Ruby, do I do this? Can I do this? Should I do this? Should I do this? Okay, let's run this. Ruby sharks. Yeah, we're swimming. That definitely works. If I take away parentheses, still works. What's the difference between this and this? Something to do with arguments. Okay, so let's pass some arguments to this function. How do I pass arguments to the function? What parameters shall we have on the method? speed. Shark name. Yeah. Swim. At a rate. Put this in a string. At a rate of. Oh, I guess I didn't need to plus sign that. Swim at a rate of. Speed might get passed in as an int, so I'll just convert it to a string. What, miles per hour? Away from shark name. I don't know, it seems, how's that? Everyone like that? Yeah? Alright. So then how do I pass speed and shark name to swim fast? See, what would be a good speed? 1 mile an hour? I think. That's like, I think, how fast does anyone swim? 1 mile an hour? Yeah, oh sorry, I'm not Canadian. What's it? Yeah, England's weird. We're metric until we don't want to be. So all the speed signs are miles per hour. And we weigh ourselves in stone. But if you were to ask me like weigh something to cook with, I'd be like, oh no, definitely grams or kilograms. Yeah. And if you ask me to measure something, I'd be like, yeah, obviously centimeters, meters, liters. Yeah. My height is definitely. 12? 20? I like somewhere in the middle. I don't know. Yeah, but like no one loses. What? That'd be 21 pounds, right? So you got to be like, oh yeah, I lost a third of a stone. That's so like little.
So how much does a stone weigh?
I think it's like 14 pounds. Yeah.
That's a pretty big stone.
I wonder. Ruby probably knows stone because Ruby knows everything. I feel like I could give it kilograms and it would tell us stone. I feel like after experimenting with Ruby, I feel like I should be able to tell Ruby like 5 kilograms is stone or something, and it would just tell me. That's not how the question mark works. All right, let's pass in a shark name. What's a good name for a shark? What? Mango? Sharky. Is this how can I still omit the parentheses, or is this still good? Still valid? Ruby? Ruby sharks. Yeah. Or I could put the parentheses there. So why would I or wouldn't I? Like, what's the difference? Parentheses look nice, or maybe they look. What? Sugar? It's ruby sugar. Yeah, some of that ruby sugar we've been talking about. Which one should you use if you're calling methods? Why? I'm actually not sure of the exact answer to this, but I do know that not using parentheses will not work all the time, so you might as well just use parentheses. What I do see often as kind of like very acceptable, puts, p, print, whatever, they are all methods, right? So you could call them like this. No one ever does. If something accepts like a single parameter or no parameters, I see this being very good to use. Just kind of follow what other people are doing. I'll include a link to a style guide in the notes so you can check that out on what a lot of Ruby developers think is good practice. But with one method, or with one parameter or no, I see this a lot, and with multiple parameters, I see parentheses a lot. Yeah, I feel like adding that doesn't really do anything. Yeah. Cool. If I call my method like this in JavaScript, that'll be just fine. If I pass in no parameters, that's fine. In Ruby, will this still work? If I pass in nothing, will I just get like at a rate of undefined? What's going to happen? Damn it, but I didn't want to have to pass in those arguments. How do I get around this then in Ruby? How do I call this with no arguments still? be a good way of being able to still call this with no arguments. What can I change up here so that I don't have to change this? So I want to call this with no argument, so what can I change up here so that I don't have to change this? But this I also want to work. I want this to work and I want this to work, so what do I change up here? But then this one won't work. It's I can assign them default parameters. Let's say speed is 0 and shark name defaults to Shamrock, because that's what came up when I typed in Sha. By default, if I call this now with no parameters, these default values will get used, but if I call it with parameters, then they will override the default values. This allows me to call it with 2 arguments, 0 arguments, I call it with 1 argument. So this feature is in JavaScript too, but we don't see it used much because you don't absolutely need it. In Ruby, what did I do? In Ruby, you will see this used a lot more, and there are a bunch of different things you can do. Many things to function parameters to make it easier or more descriptive or better to just pass variables for function. Yeah. Another common thing you might see is passing in a hash map to a function. Let's call this like options. So I'm going to omit these two for now. So options allows us to easily pass in well, I've just called this options, but passing in a hash map is what I meant to say. Passing in a hash map allows us to easily pass in some named parameters. So let's say I also wanted to be able to pass in, I don't know, what else might this function want? You know what, I'm actually going to just redefine this. Okay, so instead of accepting each parameter individually, I'm going to accept a hash map. There we go. Yeah, option. So when I call this now, I am going to pass in just a single hash map. So we're going to say same things as before. We got speed, which would be 1, and shark name, which would be Sharky. And then instead of having these be just function parameters, they're going to be in the hash map. So we will access them like this. Okay, so instead of passing in each thing individually, we're going to pass in a hash so that we can kind of name our parameters here, right? We know that speed is 1 and shark name is Sharky before we even call the function right here. Like it could be a little bit ambiguous as to what we're actually passing in. And we can do this in JavaScript too. Right? Does everyone understand what's going on there? Basically the same functionality. Let's make sure it still works. Yep. Okay. So one thing that Ruby does that is kind of cool is that if the last parameter is in fact a hash, you don't have to put these curly braces there. Not a huge improvement, but it's kind of nice now because it looks like we're calling a function just like we did up here, just like this original one, except with named parameters. Right, so in JavaScript we don't really have this option. Sure, we can pass in an object, but you know, what does 1 represent? What does Sharky represent? Here, if we're passing in named parameters, we can see exactly what each thing represents, and we could mix them up if we wanted to. Well, that's a huge benefit. But the benefit of having named parameters, it just makes your code way more readable. Are there any questions about that? Yeah, it's just accessing the value from the hash map. And this is actually such a popular way of doing things that Ruby has some sugar, some syntactic sugar around this, which allows us to actually name the parameters up here, like this, and then we can access them down here like normal parameters. Shark name. I think that's the right syntax. Yes. So this is just syntactic sugar around the fact that it's actually accepting a hash map, so we could still pass this in as a hash, and we can still mix up the order if we really want to. But it makes for, like, say, it's just printing out the same thing every time. It makes for code that can be a little bit nicer to read in English, right? Like, the function itself can look pretty similar. We can still assign default values, things like that. But here, when we call the function, it makes it a little bit more readable. And you'll see other languages that do this a lot. The reason I made a point of bringing this up is because you'll see it in Ruby a lot. And I don't want you to be confused. It's just you passing in a hash to a function, but there's a lot of syntactic sugar around it. Okay. How are we doing? 10:34. All right. Let's talk about arrays. Actually, let's just do it in the sharks thing. Let's create an array of sharks. Sharks equals different types of sharks. Manco? Mako. What else? Great white. Is that you spell great white? Whale. Actually, let's change this a little bit to make it more similar to some of your assignments today. Let's make this an array of hashes. So each of these can be a hash, where I guess like the name. Sure, that's good enough, right? What else could a shark have? Age? No, I guess it's a type. Is it a type? Tooth. Jagged or like the count of teeth? I feel like we can do tooth count. How many teeth does Jaws have? 2, 300. Over 5. All right. What else? One more thing that a shark might have. Temperament. Okay. Make that a symbol. Not nice. Damn it. Anything else? Temperament, not nice. Maybe we'll use that to do an angry thing. I think that'd be kind of cool. Okay, let's do this for all of the sharks. We have to come up with values for all of these. Yeah. Is that valid syntax? It's kind of valid. Let's just make sure. Puts sharks. Ruby sharks. Syntax error, line 41. Tooth. Oh man, I made temperament. Oh wait, no, that's. Oh, look at that. That's what it was. Yay! Okay, there's all our sharks. I feel like we should change the tooth value. How many tooth does Hammerhead have? How many tooth does Mako have? How many tooth does Great White have? Also 2,300. 5,000. Oh, 0. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, we got sharks. we got sharks. Let's write some functions. Oh wait, yeah, which ones are nice and which ones are not nice? Nice. Not nice. Great white's not. Wait, this one's nice?
Yes.
Okay. And this one's not? Okay, cool.
The whale would be nice. It's so nice.
Okay, sweet.
It has no teeth.
Yeah. Or like gums you, like.
Andrea knows more about sharks than anybody on the planet.
Oh, it's the thing from like Finding.
Yeah, he's a teacher.
I want a bigger image, damn it. That doesn't look like a carpet. That still looks scary, and like that doesn't look nice. We're like, oh, no teeth must be nice. Alright, I guess big fish it. I'm sorry, yeah, I shouldn't judge a shark by its teeth number. Alright. Let's write some functions. Let's write a function that will give it a shark and it will tell us if it's friendly or not. Okay. So what should we call this function? Well, it's just going to return true or false if it's friendly or not. There's a Ruby way of naming this function. What is the Ruby way of naming this function? It returns a Boolean, either true or false, and it's just going to tell us if the shark is friendly or not. Yeah? So what should we call the method? Friendly, question mark. In JavaScript, we would call this something like is friendly, and that's how we would know, oh yeah, that probably returns a Boolean. In Ruby, friendly. Let's give this, oh, question mark does nothing special. You'll see the exclamation mark. What's the exclamation mark do? Friendly. It what? It doesn't do the inverse. If there are two functions, one that's normal, let's say friendly, and one that's like friendly, the exclamation version does something destructive, something to be careful of. Like, be warned, this is going to do something that maybe you don't want. So if you, for example, I can't think of a concrete example. If you call replace, I think, on a string, I think that's a real thing. Calling replace will create a new string based on the old string. Calling replace with an exclamation mark would manipulate the existing string. So it's like, this is going to change your value, or this is going to do something destructive, be warned. Question mark is there to say that this returns a Boolean. But those don't mean anything to Ruby, they mean things to the developers. So Ruby just reads this as like a normal function. We have to make sure that this does what we want it to do. So let's pass in a shark, and we will return if, let's see, temperament is nice. Temperament is nice. Cool. How do I return in Ruby? Return. Do I have to write return? No, it's the same thing as not writing return. Yay. The last expression in a function will get returned in Ruby, like the value. So if I write return here, it's the same as not writing return. So let's see if this works. Let's put friendly, which shark should we call it on? Sharks. Which one is whale? You know, I'm just going to go the first one and the last one, because Ruby lets me do that easily. Okay, so the first one is jaws, which is not nice, and the last one is whale, which is nice. So we should get false true. But instead, we get undefined local variable method temperament for, Oh, right, it's shark temperament. No one caught that? Shark temperament. Obviously, I've got to access that value on this hash. I'm going to use a symbol. Hmm? Done a lot of symbol stuff. There we go, false true. Yay. Yay, we did it. What if I want to loop through all of them and have it print out if they're friendly or not? How do I do a loop in Ruby? Dot each? Okay, so sharks dot each. Then what? Do. And some line things and a shark. Pipes. Pipes. And then what? And the next line puts friendly shark. That's not how you spell that. Friendly, is that how you spell it? I don't know. And then what? And yeah. So you guys get how to loop through stuff. False true, true, false true. Yay. Okay, who's got the first question about this syntax?
What does the question mark actually stand for?
It's just for the developers. Ruby does nothing with the question mark, but
Okay.
if I'm a developer and I write a function like that, you, another developer, knows, oh, that's going to return a Boolean value.
Yeah. I thought it was interesting because like in some of the videos we were watching, they would even like put like a function thing with question mark and stuff. I was like,
Yeah, so
some
this
kind
is
of reminder.
this is the function friendly, it has a question mark. Yeah, it just implies that this will return a Boolean, but that's just to the developer. Just as like the exclamation mark does nothing for Ruby. Ruby looks at that and doesn't notice any difference from that than another character.
Okay.
But another developer knows, oh, I should be careful with this function. It's going to do something.
This is a true or false.
So this question mark, what do you mean?
Like the question mark is saying that you're getting a Boolean.
Yeah, the question mark, yeah. Just like a function in JavaScript that starts with is most likely going to return a Boolean. Like is friendly, probably going to return a Boolean. Question mark, probably going to return a Boolean. No, you don't need it. It's good practice because now everyone knows this returns a Boolean. It's like the equivalent of saying friendly. This returns a Boolean. But, you know, if we spell it this way instead, it looks nicer. And we get to say friendly.
Okay, can we go down to the other one then?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So we're running friendly with shark, and then we're putzing the output. Putzing the output of friendly. So this is the equivalent of this. Maybe I'll just call it, so I think that makes it more clear. So we call friendly, we pass in shark, which will just give us true or false, and then we're putting that, which means that we get the Boolean value. Cool? Cool. What's the difference between a function or a method in Ruby and this thing? Because it kind of looks like a callback function in JavaScript, but it's not. Wasn't it right? Like this was JavaScript, we just pass an anonymous function to for each and then do this exact same looking thing. But in Ruby we've got this do end thing, which is a new thing, and like what's the difference between that and a method? Here's another question. Are methods first class things in Ruby? Like, can I say, I don't know, func equals friendly, right? Like assign the method to another variable. Can I pass it around like a variable like I can in JavaScript? No. In fact, if I write this code, func is going to be the return value of calling friendly because this is the equivalent of having parentheses on the end. So functions are not first-class citizens in Ruby like they are in JavaScript. We can't pass functions around. We can't assign them to variables. Like, functions just exist to be methods on objects. That's it. So in JavaScript, for each expects a function to be passed in, a callback function. But Ruby doesn't have callback functions because we can't use functions that way. So instead it has this thing called blocks, which look like this. So when you see this do end syntax, it is a block in Ruby. I think most of the time anyway. And this is their version of callback functions. They're different to normal functions, but they work in a very similar way, as you can see. Right? We're just going to call this block of code for each item in this array, and we're going to pass in this parameter. So they're really, really similar to functions, but they're not functions. There are two different syntaxes we can use. We can use the do and like this, or we can just use curly braces, which work in a pretty similar way, but look like this instead of do end. Right, looks pretty similar. Should do the same thing. Cool. We usually use do end for multi-line blocks, and we usually use the curly braces for a single line. So it's like, oh, this is going to be like a single line, pretty simple thing. Just use the curly braces to do like that. Apart from that, they're mostly the same.
So when would you want to use one of those?
Use the curly braces when you are doing a single line thing like this. This is just going to be a single line, simple thing. Go nuts. If you're doing a lot of logic, multi-line.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Like,
But if you see either syntax, know that they're basically equivalent.
one is just like
Yeah. Yeah. And notice that we're not, or maybe I'll show you. We're not parsing, at least I'm pretty sure, yes, okay. We're not parsing this block as a function parameter. Here I'm calling the function, and here is the block. Calling the function, here's the block. The block comes after the function call, so we're not passing it as a parameter, right? If each took a parameter, I'd pass it in here. So these blocks are also not function parameters. No, that would come over here in the block itself, like index. Right, like this. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah, it's a little. It's just I'm making a point that this is different. It's similar to JavaScript, like basically is a for each.
Yeah.
But it's also quite different the way Ruby does things, because it'd be nice to think of these as functions that we just pass into the each method, but they're not. They're blocks that we actually don't pass to the method at all, even though it acts in such a similar way. So if you want to kind of ignore it for now and just get on with like a similar syntax that works for the most part for you, that's kind of cool. That's fine for now. But at some point you'll have to start realizing these are pretty different the way they do things like Ruby and JavaScript. And at some point it won't work to just think of them in the exact same way, because they are different. For example, if you wanted to implement your own map or your own each, like we did in JavaScript, you'd have to know exactly what's going on under the hood. So if you are more interested in that, and you would, I think it's a good exercise to like implement your own version of map or each like you did in JavaScript. Look into how these blocks actually work and do that as an exercise. Otherwise, yeah, they're kind of like callback functions, but a little different. Okay. We have a limited amount of time left, so let's talk about some other functions. So we've looked at each. What are the important methods that we have on a Ruby array? Yeah, like, so we can grab the first thing from the array, the last thing from an array, but like how each is a pretty important method that we can do fun stuff with. What other methods are we most likely to come into or use a lot in Ruby on an array? So array.each, array.filter, reduce, map. Anyone played around with the array methods yet? ruby-doc.org is really great for all documentation on Ruby. If you're interested about what anything does, come here. We're going to look for array. And we're going to see which methods we can call on an array. I first want to look. Oh, no, not array. Enumerable, which is what array includes. Or was it array? I was looking for each. Oh no, it's right there, each. Okay. Sorry, that was a bit confusing. Now I'm lost. 1 second. There we go. All right, we're going back to enumerable. Okay, so these are methods that I can call on any enumerable thing. An array is an enumerable thing. We'll talk maybe a little bit about that later. These are things that I can call on the array. So we got first, we got flat map, find all, find. Which methods do you think we'll be using today? As reduce, map, sort. Those ones seem a little bit familiar. In Ruby, though, there are a set of methods that all rhyme with each other in this enumerable module. See if you can notice the ones that rhyme. So is detect here, inject, reject, select. Everyone see the cute rhyming methods? What do you think those ones do? Select, reject, inject. See, I put this in the notes somewhere. Right here. This is on my little cheat sheet. The methods you need to know for arrays in rhyme. Select is filter, collect is map, inject is reduce, detect is find, and reject is actually not in JavaScript. It's kind of a cool thing. But yeah, you already know how to use things like filter, map, reduce, find. Sort's another one that you've used. So these work similar in Ruby, but you get to use nice rhyming things. So let's take a look at, let's see, let's take a look at filter, inject. So let's start with something, let's do something you do understand so it's easier to make the comparison. In fact, I think select is kind of a cool one because then you get to look at reject too. So instead of just looping through all the sharks and checking if they're friendly, let's sharks dot select. Which sharks do we want out of all of these sharks in the array? Which ones do we want? The ones with the fewer teeth. So let's select all the sharks that have what? Tooth less than. Actually, that's a decent. That's most of our sharks. Okay, so let's select sharks where tooth is under 100. Notice how the blocks are acting like functions again. I don't have to return explicitly. In fact, I can't return that. So this is going to return all the sharks with teeth under 100. What do we call these sharks, this subset of sharks? I don't know, let's just post them. Oh wait, no, let's assign it to a variable. Untoothy. Let's put that. Alright, so we select all the sharks where the tooth is less than 100. What have I done wrong? You guys were paying attention. I was not. So those are all the sharks with teeth less than 100. Okay, these are all the untoothy sharks. Let's select the ones where they have less than 100 teeth. Now, what if I wanted the exact opposite of that? I wanted sharks where the teeth were greater than 100. Or, more fun, Sharks select, sharks reject all the ones with teeth less than 100. Puts toothy. Oh wait, this would be toothy sharks. Damn it. Oh, it's just me by accident hitting the touch bar to put my computer to sleep. Toothy and untoothy. Hey, that's all our sharks. That was fun. Select, reject. What else we got? Collect. Actually, let's collect. Sharks, collect. What do you think? What should we make out of our sharks array? Yeah. I don't even know what would be a good idea. Let's just create an array of temperaments. Yeah, okay, so like hungry if shark temperament. I typed in temperament and I think it thought it meant tea, so I got a tea emoji. If shark temperament is not nice. Well, that's kind of evil. They're not nice and they're hungry. Alright, this isn't going to work as my one-liner, so I'm going to do it like this. Okay. Else. Yeah, else not hungry. End. And done. This is going to be an array of just hungry or not hungry. Hunger equals, alright, this is kind of an anticlimactic thing to do. Does that work? Is this valid? So if the temperament is not nice, then we're going to return hungry, otherwise not hungry. Hungry, not hungry, not hungry, hungry, not hungry. It's got an array of hungry things. It was like, I feel like I should have done a better last example, but whatever. Any questions about select, reject, collect? Ruby? Blocks, symbols, functions? Sharks? You look tough. No? Cool, alright.